what the city is talking about, the news that impacts you. Welcome to the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Welcome to another edition of The Week That Was here on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and this week we'll take a look at these stories. As inflation takes a bigger and bigger toll on our wallets, particularly when it comes to food costs, some Canadians are wondering how our major grocery store chains continue to generate record profits. An issue that might have spurred Canada's Competition Bureau to launch an investigation into the sector. We'll find out more.
What is RSV? Why are more children getting it and being hospitalized because of it? There's a lot of questions, and we got some answers from a specialist at the Montreal Children's Hospital.
With chess enjoying a surge in popularity worldwide, enthusiasts of the game are suggesting that maybe now the time is right to introduce it as a compulsory module in a school's program, to serve as a learning tool. We spoke to a professor and avid chess player for his take.
But we begin with this. Since the war began in Ukraine 8 long months ago, we've been checking in fairly regularly with SOVSUN, a member of parliament in Ukraine. She's been defiant, determined, and resilient. But as the war drags on and Russia seems to be changing tactics, how are they fighting back now? And is there an end in sight?
Every now and then when we have the opportunity to, we like to check in with SOVSUN. She's an elected member of parliament in Ukraine. And we've spoken, I think, over the past couple of months, Natasha, at least, about half a dozen times, because the situation there, of course, has changed so much since Russia, of course, invaded Ukraine. So we thought we'd chat again today because Ukraine, if you've been following, I guess recently, I don't know if we can say it's good news, but Ukraine has been pushing back against Russian captured territory in recent weeks. And then yesterday, Russia alleged, I don't know if you heard this, that Ukraine was preparing a provocation by launching an attack on its own citizens and then blaming Russia for it, something that is called a false flag. We wanted to find out about that situation as well. Ina SOVSUN has been graciously there and giving us her time again today. Ina, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me again.
Let me start with what we always ask when we talk to you, which is how are you doing? Are you safe? And how is your family?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Other than the blackouts, everything is fine where I am. So because of the attacks on the energy infrastructure in Ukraine, and the Russians damaged up to 40% of our energy infrastructure, there are some disruptions in services, particularly with electricity. So a couple of times in the last week, we didn't have electricity at home for a couple of hours. So that's unpleasant. Annoys my son a lot, but other than that, I guess we are fine. So thanks for asking.
And can I ask as well if the mood has changed? Now, you mentioned these blackouts, which are occurring on a regular basis. Do you find that people's, I call them attitudes, have changed or beginning to change or waver in some sense?
It is changing in terms of getting less inclined to have any sort of peace deal with Russia. There was actually some recent polling announced here, which says that about 90% of Ukrainians are against any type of peace deal with Russia as of today. So if the goal of Putin was to make us scared and to make people leave and to make them, force the government to negotiate, he actually achieved quite the opposite goal. I remember 2 weeks ago when I was sitting in the underground in metro station with my son, and there were hundreds of other people over there, and I haven't seen a single person panicking, even though we could hear explosions in Kyiv at that day. But everybody was just calling their relatives and saying, yeah, we're fine, we're good, it's just part of our life today, but as soon as this is over, we'll get back to work. So people are not panicking, people are getting more resilient, and people are reacting in ways that Putin could not predict and understand. We reacted as democratic society with something that Putin never grasped.
That's very interesting. I love what you're saying about the resilience, because that's something we've spoken about quite a bit, the resilience and the spirit of Ukrainian people, and that giving up just isn't an option. But there was also a lot of confidence, Ina, that you would win and that it would be resolved. Is that confidence still there?
Oh, yes, very much so. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a slow but steady movement of the Ukrainian forces, of the Ukrainian army on the south, in the area around HICKSON. And I'm also reading quite actively some Russian social media where they report about what they're doing. And even the Russian social media are saying that, yeah, we'll probably have to leave Kherson at some point if the Ukrainians keep on pushing us. So we do believe it is possible. And actually, what my understanding, and it's shared by many people here in Ukraine, is that Putin started those attacks on energy infrastructure because his army couldn't show any significant results on the battlefield. And I believe that is true. He needed to show something to domestic audience, and he couldn't just keep on showing them that Russian army is retreating because Ukrainians are attacking. So he needed to show something else. And the most maybe sad thing about all of this is that the majority of Russians are happy to learn that Ukrainians do not have electricity. And I'm reading the comments in Russian social media, and everybody is saying, like, yeah, Ukrainians should be living like pigs. They shouldn't have any light. They shouldn't have any electricity. They should freeze to death. Their children should not have anything to eat, and so on and so forth. So I'm just telling you this because we know that. But I believe majority of people who would be able to read Russian just don't understand this spirit and to what extent they hate us and the fact that we are still standing.
I'm kind of gobsmacked at that. And then it makes me think that the Russian propaganda machine is working, right? They're being told a false narrative about Ukrainians. So then let's talk about this claim of a provocation that Ukraine plans to launch an attack on its own citizens. Part of the Russian propaganda machine?
Yeah, definitely. I do believe at this point there are very little people outside of Russia who would believe what Putin claimed. But of course, we do take it extremely seriously because you remember we are dealing with a guy who blew up the residential buildings all over Russia to strengthen his power in the early 2000s. You know, that's a very scary person that we are dealing with. He is capable of killing his own citizens, not to mention Ukrainians. So, of course, it is a serious threat. We hope the world reacts to it properly. And we are not taking it lightheartedly, trust me, all of us here in Ukraine. I am particularly concerned that they might use it somewhere in the battlefield. So that would endanger our troops there as well. So we do take it seriously, and we hope the world understands that it's just Russia basically announcing what they are planning to do by claiming that Ukrainians will do it.
I want to go back to something that was in the news actually last week. We haven't had a chance to talk about this with you. This idea that when Ukraine said it was going to try to fast track its way into NATO, that Russia saw that as a provocation and used that as an excuse to say, we're going to step things up. They went ahead and annexed those 4 territories. Now they declared martial law there as well. What is the situation with respect to NATO in Ukraine now?
I should comment on the annexation. They've been planning those referenda since early summer. So it was not something that happened as the response to what Ukraine did. It happened because they were planning to do it a couple of months before that, but they were failing to do that. So just remember about those attempts of referendum before that. So they claim that it's the response of Ukraine, claiming that they want to join NATO, but, you know, they can claim whatever. The reality is that they just, want to destroy us and the world and the values that we represent and that we share with you. But in terms of NATO, again, the level of support to NATO membership of Ukraine inside the country is unprecedentedly high. It was not a very sure thing, like in January. I think about 65% of people were in favor of joining NATO. Now it's over 80%. So people now understand that this is the only way to secure our country, is to be part of a military bloc. I also believe that the majority of people understand we wouldn't be able to join NATO until we have territorial disputes. So we need to deal with that first. But we still hope for NATO membership at some point, and we believe that we have proven that A, we share the same values with the NATO member states, and B, we have a very strong army that can be an asset to NATO.
So we heard President Zelensky talk the other day to a Canadian reporter, I guess to a group of reporters, thanking Canada for what it has done in supporting, of course, Ukraine, and for being one of the first actually to be able to come into it and say, yes, we stand with Ukraine. What is now with respect to the rest of Europe, because I know it's not necessarily uniform support for Ukraine. Where are we in that situation?
Yeah, indeed, because we do have Hungary, which is basically Putin's voice inside the European Union, and many sanctions that could have been introduced on the EU level are basically blocked by Hungary. So that is a big challenge for the EU as an organization overall. But in terms of support to Ukraine, I'll tell you this. We are grateful for support from many countries. Germany is the biggest EU contributor, but then, of course, outside of the EU, the United Kingdom is a huge supporter and contributor to Ukraine's defense and recovery, and so on. There are several countries that are less willing to help. But I think right now the major issue is to make it a joint effort. Because, for instance, the biggest issue that we still haven't broken through is the issue of combat tanks. Not a single country has supplied us with combat tanks. Neither the US, nor Canada, UK, Germany, nobody is supplying us with combat tanks. The only things we got are the Soviet tanks that were basically in storage and that were basically useless for the Eastern European countries. And now everybody's just pointing fingers and saying, yeah, Germany says we want the US to be the first. The US says, yeah, but we have Abramses, which are difficult to maintain, and so on and so forth. You have Leopards, which are easy, and the logistics is easy, and so on and so forth. So I think I very much hope that there would be a breakthrough on the tanks issue, because that is the major thing where there is no political decision to supply tanks to Ukraine. And I think that now, after Putin playing with the dirty bomb allegations, I think it's the tanks issues need to be resolved. And if Canada can help with that, as a huge supporter of Ukraine, we would be appreciative of that, of course.
Ina, before we let you go, as Aaron said, we always want to know about how you're doing, how your son is doing. I'm just curious, you mentioned that your son is obviously bothered by the blackouts, but is he largely able to live his life? Does he go to school? Can he play with friends? What's day-to-day life for him and for you? What's it like?
He is going to school. Starting from September, he went back to school offline. It was a difficult choice for me and his father because, we could either continue studying online, but because of COVID, for him, he's in the 4th grade. So for him, that would be the 4th year in school where he would be studying online at least part of the time. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine to what extent that affects the quality of education. So we opted for going offline. The days are different. Sometimes there are air raid alerts which last 3 hours, so they have to spend time in the bomb shelter in his school. But sometimes, like today, there was an air raid alert for about 1 hour. So he told me this evening that they missed one class because they were in the bomb shelter. But sometimes they're unknown, and then they can leave as normally as it is possible. But another sad fact for him is that many of his classmates left. So I think about 2/3 of his class left the country. So he's annoyed because he doesn't have many friends to play with. But at least some people are there. And I also know some people are coming back as unexpectedly as it is. So we are trying to arrange for him as normal a life as is possible under these circumstances.
I'm sure.
We wish you all the best, you and your family, Ina, and always thank you for taking the time to chat with us. And again, wish you all the best. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Ina SOVSUN in Ukraine. You know the situation there. We can only pray for that to eventually get resolved.
Informative, interactive, and always interesting. This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
The game of chess has been gaining in popularity worldwide, possibly owing in part to TV shows like The Queen's Gambit. And now there's a move to introduce the game to all children as part of the education curriculum. We spoke to one avid player who thinks the timing is right to make that happen now. The game of chess, and I'm sure this is not a surprise to you, has been gaining in popularity. I think a lot of people might say that has something to do probably with the success of the TV series, The Queen's Gambit, which became such a giant hit on Netflix. Here in Montreal, of course, we have a world champion, Shawn Rodrigue Lemieux, who we had on the show just a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So now I guess advocates are seizing the moment for chess's surge in popularity and calling for it to be, check it out, taught in schools as a learning tool. Okay. Michael HICKSON is an avid chess player. He's also an associate professor of philosophy at Trent University, and he's on the line right now. Mr. HICKSON, thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Thanks very much for having me.
Is it fair to say that this surge in chess's popularity, whether it's from a TV show or from more people playing, is really kind of the reason why advocates are saying, hey, let's seize on the moment and get more people to play chess?
Well, yes and no. So it is a good time when everybody is sort of thinking about chess to start to push this idea. But, it's not a new idea. There's an association in Canada called the Chess and Math Association that's been doing wonderful work for decades trying to get chess into the schools. And they've mostly been organizing extracurricular activities. So I don't want to claim that I have an original idea here. It's a pretty old one, and there are many countries in Europe that have chess in the schools or that have chess funded by government, ministries. So, chess has been popular for a long time, but maybe in Canada we're less aware of it.
Okay, I just want to ask one thing. There are chess clubs. I remember when I was in high school, there was a chess club. I'm sure they still exist, but they were fairly small. You get, a half a dozen kids would go out and be part of the chess club. When you say you want it taught in schools, how would that work?
Well, the way that it would work is like any other discipline being taught in schools. You would have to carve out some time. That's the tough part of the proposal, of course, is what exactly you're going to cut. But, if we're talking about, say, an hour a week, then there are so many learning tools available for chess. That's part of the reason why I would focus on chess here. There are online courses like through chess.com that are a lot of fun, and they're extremely effective at teaching people to play chess from beginner all the way up to high levels. I myself started doing that 6 years ago, getting into chess, and it's very addictive. It's very fun. And what's addictive about it is how much improvement you see so quickly, and the way that your brain just lights up because it's using all of the different kinds of thinking that human beings are capable of just to solve these little problems on a chessboard.
So that's what I was going to ask you, Michael, because there's a chess program at my daughter's school, and some of the kids who struggle in certain areas really thrive in chess. So there's one kid who is just an absolute whiz, who's on the spectrum, and he's teaching it to the other kids. And like my daughter has ADHD, but for whatever reason, she's really able to focus and strategize with chess. So is this the idea that it can teach kids who struggle in some areas to how to thrive?
Yeah, absolutely. There is something for everybody in chess. I remember growing up with kind of this prejudiced way of thinking that chess was kind of for math nerds or something like that, right? And it's just absolutely not the case. There's no proven correlation between any, certain kind of talent and then chess. So math people don't do better at chess than other people do. So chess, it's got creativity in it. You have to imagine possibilities on the board the way an artist does. It requires memory because you have to remember times when you've played in the past and you've seen this position before and what did you do. It requires calculation at certain points, so it is a little bit like mathematics. It's scientific. You have to experiment and learn from your failures and your successes. It is a physical game, despite, what people think. It causes a lot of stress to the body. So people who are competitive, find something in it there. So it's got something for everybody. It uses every part of the brain. And so that accounts for why it's 1,500 years old and still going strong, right?
So when you bring up the idea of teaching it in schools, so you have to, I guess you would have to have an entire school board or a group of educators be on board with this. What's reaction been so far with this idea of, having just been recently brought up?
Well, yeah. So again, I would point to the huge success of the Chess and Math Association that's been getting chess into schools as an extracurricular activity. So I think, in Canada, we haven't had a really strong push yet, the way that I hope we will, to get school boards to buy into this as a course during the school year. But chess clubs and extracurricular tournaments and things like that have been around long enough with so much success that there's something to build on there. But yeah, as for getting into the nuts and bolts of, hey, how much time can we get into the school? That's at the very beginning, I would say.
But ultimately, you would like to see it become like a math class per se, like a mandatory course?
Yeah, now I would like to see that, and I wouldn't want to align it with any kind of course. So, I mean, I know that you just meant math as an example, but, the reason why I think we need to get chess into the schools is because of the fact that the biggest problems that are facing us today are interdisciplinary problems. Something like climate change, we normally associate it with science. But it's not just a scientific problem. It's a political problem. It's a moral problem, a human rights problem, a legal problem. It's a communications problem. The same way the pandemic has been all of these things. It's not just a scientific problem. We've learned that the way you communicate to people will really affect vaccine uptakes and compliance with regulations and things like that. We have to start to train people to think from many different perspectives, and that's what chess does. And it does it in a fun way that I think, we could sneak this into the schools in the sense that the kids wouldn't think they were being punished if they were told to play a board game. Yeah. It's not like I'm not advocating an extra hour or two of math or science or something like that. I'm advocating they play a board game because that game represents the kind of problems that are facing us today, problems that require many perspectives.
I wish you good luck. I think it probably sold some people on the idea just hearing you talk this afternoon. Mr. Hickson, we're out of time. I thank you so much for being available today.
Asking questions, looking for answers. Here's more of Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Two words we seem to be hearing a lot lately, Triple-Demic and RSV. Across Canada, cases of RSV are rising, particularly in children. And as hospitals are dealing with COVID, the flu, and now RSV, what do you need to know to keep your loved ones as safe as possible? We found out.
There is a story that's been actually brewing now in the U.S. for quite some time. I keep seeing it show up on the national news on a fairly regular basis. It involves something called RSV. And, of course, you wonder when you see something there, thinking how long until we start to see it here, because they're neighbors. And it's going to happen here just like COVID happened there. It happened here. But the problem, and I don't say the problem, but the issue now is the fact that it's affecting younger and younger children. And now we're starting to hear the term triple-demic. In other words, COVID and the flu, because it's flu season. And now we have to factor RSV, which is a respiratory virus, into this equation, in which I understand there is no vaccine for. Dr. Earl Rubin is Director of Infectious Diseases, the Department at the Montreal Children's. He's on the line right now. Dr. Rubin, thanks for the time this afternoon.
No problem.
Can we begin by defining what RSV is and just how serious it is here?
Sure. So RSV stands for respiratory syncytial virus. It's a virus that is not new. We've had it forever, but it's generally a seasonal virus. What's different this year is that typically prior to COVID, we would see RSV start early November and last through till the end of February. And it causes an illness typically called bronchiolitis in infants under the age of 6 months. And it's something that is the main reason for hospitalization during the winter season prior to COVID. So it's not anything that's new. It's a virus. There's no specific treatment for it, and it causes a lot of secretions, and these secretions get clogged and block up the little airways called the bronchioles, and the children, young infants, can have difficulty breathing and need supportive care, sometimes hospitalization, but most of the time just at home, and it will pass like any other virus. So it's not something new. But what we are seeing this year, and what we did see last year as well, last year we saw it come very quickly at the end of August and early September and die off very quickly. And then we really didn't have much RSV during the typical RSV season. This year we're seeing it starting end of September and we're seeing it with a vengeance. It's spreading, and what's really the belief of what is causing so many kids getting sick and so many kids requiring medical attention, whether it be in the emergency room or admission, is this belief because of COVID for the last 2 years, kids have not been exposed. They haven't gone to daycare, school, adults were wearing masks, and so they haven't built up an immunity. And so we're seeing all of these kids who prior to COVID would have been exposed and built up immunity, they're now not immune. And there's other theories that COVID may or may not play a factor that will predispose to subsequent infections being a little bit more significant. So it's not something new. What is new is that we are seeing kids a little bit older than 6 months, like 6 months to 18 months, who are getting sicker than usual, and it's because they had never seen RSV before. And it's easily spread, and there are no longer anybody wearing masks and vigilant about hand washing and all the things that we've done in the last couple of years.
So it's spread like COVID or the flu or a common cold?
So hard to put COVID in that same category, but yes, it's spread by droplets. It's not really believed to be airborne, whereas COVID, there's a belief that there's an airborne component. But all the flu, common cold, and COVID is predominantly spread by droplets. So that if a kid coughs in your face and you're within a meter, or an adult can get it and will just get a cold, or vice versa. An older sibling who goes to school who coughs in the face of the infant will spread by droplets.
Are there outbreaks, Dr. Rubin, like there are with the flu?
So it's a season. So the flu and RSV are typically seasonal viruses. Everything post-COVID is kind of out the window in what we've seen forever.
Sorry, yes, I should have been more specific. I meant does a daycare get an outbreak? A household get an outbreak? Does it kind of work like that?
Yeah, it's easily spread. So again, because of the droplets, it's easily spread. However, in a household, the older siblings or the adults probably have seen it year after year, or have built up a certain amount of immunity. Okay. And if they do get it, they just get a little bit of a cold and nothing much.
So as a parent, hearing this, and obviously no one wants to have to run to emergency every time you think your child may have a cold, at what point should you be taking your child to the hospital?
So that's all based on the clinical symptoms. So if the child, for RSV in particular, but for anything, with RSV, if there is really significant difficulty breathing, so that they are kind of indrawing between their ribs, or their muscles in their neck are kind of working overtime to help breathe, if the color is off, if the baby is not feeding because of the difficulty in breathing, these are the indications to come to the emergency room. If they just have a cold and a fever, they don't need to come to the emergency room. They can be seen by a primary care physician out in the community, and that will be better to offload the emerge that is overwhelmed at this point in time.
And once treated, if they end up in emerge, how long is that treatment typically? And I understand this is serious, but not serious enough that we're not having people die from this.
So first, let's talk about when you say treatment. There is no treatment for RSV. It's time. More than anything. The treatment is what we call supportive care. So if the child needs oxygen, then they get admitted for oxygen. If they need suctioning because those secretions are so deep down that they need deep suctioning and not just at the entrance of the nose that parents can do a mouche bébé, then they get admitted. If they're not drinking because they have a significant amount of respiratory distress, or they're just so sick, then they may need an intravenous or a nasogastric tube to give them nutrition, and then it's time. There's no treatment per se.
And how can it be avoided? Is it kind of a case of taking the usual precautions?
Yeah, it's good hand washing. For the young infants, if somebody's got a cold, it's best that they kind of stay 1 to 3 meters away. But in a household, that's just not a practical, suggestion. Mm-hmm. If it gets introduced into the household and you have a young child, chances are they will get that.
So you had mentioned a moment ago beyond, bring your child to the hospital at that particular stage when it's serious enough, because that's what you should do. What is it like now? You alluded to the emergency rooms and the overcrowding. We've all heard these stories now for the past little while. You're seeing the same thing there. Are you seeing an increase pediatrically as far as this goes?
Yeah, this is something that we are definitely experiencing so we being the Montreal Children's, same thing at St. Justine, and very well reported in other provinces, Ontario predominantly, and us, and across the states. And so you have these young infants and you have these older toddlers who are not immune, who are getting RSV. It's more are becoming symptomatic because they're not immune, and they are getting sicker for whatever the reason may be, from the lack of immunity or some other theories. And so our emergency room is overwhelmingly busy. The wait to get admitted, because our beds are full. It's a real issue currently.
Are we currently in a triple-demic? You know, we're saying this term is being used to say if you've got COVID going around, the flu and RSV going around at the same time. Are we experiencing a triple-demic in Montreal right now?
So let's just kind of clarify a few things. First, somebody won't get all three of them at the same time. So that's generally there's something called viral interference that if somebody is infected with, let's say, RSV, they won't get influenza. Their cells are already kind of occupied by the RSV infection. The concern and why people are throwing around this triple-demic or whatever is that we are coming into flu season. The last couple of years we didn't have much, but they have flu in the States, and so it's likely coming. And flu can cause a similar illness, not only in young infants, but anybody, the elderly, etc. So the question, the concern is that normally, yes, we have flu and we deal with it. Yes, we have RSV, but they don't necessarily always overlap. And then we have COVID. And everything about COVID, anything I tell you today will be different tomorrow. We don't know what's going to be with newer variants. Will that also increase the demand on the healthcare system? So the concern of the triple-demic is not that somebody is going to get all three illnesses at the same time and get very sick and die. It's what is going to happen to the hospital network and the system if all three are circulating at the same time.
So I'm just wondering, as you laid out sort of that groundwork, with respect to COVID itself, where are we now on that? And I know you said it changes from day to day as new variants sort of happen, but are we seeing overcrowding possibly still based on that or not from what you've seen?
So I can speak to, from a pediatric perspective, we are still seeing cases, the majority of cases who are admitted who are COVID positive are admitted for another reason. We are seeing an increase in numbers of COVID, not overwhelmingly, but overall, not just from a pediatric perspective. And that is likely due to waning immunity from vaccines. If it's people have not gotten their boosters and they're getting sick enough that they have to come to hospital attention. Because that's what the vaccines are going to do, is prevent serious disease but not prevent infection. But out there in the community, there seems to be an increase in number as well. And so likely due to waning immunity. Is it due to some newer variants that we are suspecting will be coming? There's BQ1, 1.1, BA 4.6. There's all of these new variants, but how is that going to actually play out? We don't really know. Is there going to be some cross-protection from previous infection, from the vaccine? Time will tell us.
Dr. Rubin, I want to thank your time, or thank you rather for your time this afternoon. Thanks so much.
No problem.
Dr. Earl Rubin, he's Director of Infectious Diseases, the Department at the Montreal Children's, and I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. Oh. You know, I can't imagine as a parent with a newborn that anything goes wrong, your first move. And I heard someone at St. Justin's, one of the doctors there, suggest it's bad as it's ever been with admissions for kids. But what are you supposed to do? Yeah. You know, you see your child is struggling. You want to take that and go to emergency as soon as you can. You don't want to see that continue. And good luck trying to find, you said you can go to your own physician, right? Yeah. Good luck if you have, a pediatrician somewhere who can see you that quickly.
Call 811. They are so great. They will help you assess whether you need to go to emergency.
That's a good tip right there.
The stories in the news that are worth your time. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall.
Canada's Competition Bureau has decided to launch an investigation into the grocery industry in this country after record profits were reported by all of Canada's major players in the sector. We spoke to a university professor in the food and agriculture sector about what that investigation might turn up. So we've been talking for this a couple of days. I kind of went off on a bit of a slant yesterday. I'd read something Jagmeet Singh had posted where he's calling on the government for a variety of different reasons as we all decide what to do, to battle inflation, telling them that the Bank of Canada is doing the wrong thing by raising rates when, in fact, every other industrialized nation in the world is doing exactly the same thing. One of the other reasons, though, he said the root causes of inflation are obvious, and one of those, outside of the Bank of Canada, was the charge, the accusation, the allegation that our grocery store chains in this country are making record profits right now and basically all taking us for a ride.
And colluding.
Yeah. And just making hand over fist money, and there's something wrong. And then sure enough, there's a story yesterday. This actually broke yesterday afternoon. Canada's Competition Bureau launching an investigation into the grocery industry in this country after those record profits were reported. In what? In the hope that they'll find out there was collusion or something going on? I don't know. Let's find out. Mike Van Masso is an associate professor in the Food, Agricultural, and Resource Economics Department at the University of Guelph. He's on the line right now. Mr. Van Masso, thanks for the time.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, let me begin by asking you, nothing they say is coincidence in politics, so everyone's kind of raising a stink about what's been going on, and suddenly the Competition Bureau's decided to launch an investigation. Should we be surprised?
Well, I'm not surprised at all that the Competition Bureau is launching an investigation. Like you said, there's the political pressure. There have been the federal NDP have talked about it. There have been lots of people complaining about the high prices of groceries, and it's easy to point the finger at retailers because that's who we're giving our money to. I am a little bit surprised that they limited the scope of the inquiry just to pricing, but well, let's see what they come up with. I'm not optimistic that they'll find anything, and I think it'll be really hard to prove if they do.
Okay, but then I think automatically about what we knew about the bread cartel, that they were fixing the price and driving the price of bread up. So I had it in my mind that, where there's smoke, there's fire. I just thought, yes, there must be an issue here. You think quite the opposite.
Well, I think they came out, and in fact, Loblaws came out and said there has been bread price fixing. That has been at the Competition Bureau for years, and we've still got no charges. They've said it's a very difficult thing to prove. Here we have absolutely no evidence that this is happening, including no one coming out and saying it's happening, and we're going to try and find answers by the end of next June. It's just not likely to happen. I think there are lots of reasons that food prices are going up. I don't think that retailers are screwing consumers and making them go up even higher, and so I think that we're just looking for an easy scapegoat, and we're maybe missing some of the real reasons that food prices are going up.
Okay, well then that leads us to the next question. I mean, you're talking about food prices going up, but they're going up at the fastest pace that they have in over 40 years. How can we explain that?
Well, I don't know if you remember back a few years ago, we were all complaining about $10 heads of cauliflower because there was frost in California, and so that part of the winter's cauliflower crop got frozen, and we didn't get new fresh cauliflower for 3 weeks, and cauliflower went through the roof. There are all sorts of things that can impact the cost of food. We've got the war in Ukraine, which has been significant. We've got OPEC plus cutting back oil production. We have some ongoing disruptions in the supply chain. We've got extreme weather events due to climate change. All of those things are sort of happening at the same time, and we almost have this perfect storm of impacts that are affecting food prices across the board. And the reason food prices are going up at the fastest rate is that everything is going up rather than this going up for that reason and then something else not. And so we have sort of this compounding impact that's happening right now.
I was going to say I'm happy to hear you say that. And we kind of had this discussion between ourselves yesterday. Natasha believes we're getting screwed, and I'm like, no, it's costing everybody more. So
you're just glad you're right.
No, I just, let's face it. You brought up Ukraine. Yes, there's nothing we can do as a country about that situation. I'm not sure how much potential, we can do or we can effect in terms of supply chain management. So when you hear someone like Galen Weston speaking up, and I think perhaps he put his foot in his mouth a little bit last week when he said, don't worry, Loblaws is going to take the lead by freezing prices. And then, of course, all the other major grocery chains in this country said, hey, wait a sec. That's what we typically do. It's going to happen anyway, so don't give him credit. Do you feel that all these cost increases, right, and the price increases consumers are paying, are because the people who end up supplying all these goods to our stores are paying more?
Well, I think everyone, it's just more it's more expensive to move product. It's more expensive to buy the raw ingredients. Wheat is up because of the Ukraine. Vegetable oils are up. And we see that means that the grains that we're feeding to animals that produce milk and dairy products and beef and pork products are going up. So all of those costs are going up. And so, those costs have to be recaptured in the system, or they'll just not get produced anymore. So, yep, costs are going up throughout the system. We knew this was going to happen. It was pretty predictable. It's unfortunate that all of these things are happening at once, but you're right. You know, we're not going to make it go away by putting a price freeze for 3 months on no-name products from Loblaws or from any other store. That's not to say it's not worth doing. It is worth doing, but perhaps we shouldn't celebrate it quite so loudly and spend a bunch of money on advertisements to pat ourselves on the back for it.
What do you?
I mean, I'm just thinking I'll take all the help I can get. I will take that 3 month for price freeze, just because in the meantime, you know, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it in the pocketbook. What I'm wondering is, you're talking about all these different factors that have contributed to this. As those factors ease up, will those prices come back down, or once they're up, they stay up?
Well, prices go down much slower than they go up. We all know that. And I think as these things ease, we should start seeing some relief. The unfortunate thing is, I'm not sure we're going to see that relief in the next few months. I hate to be sort of Debbie Downer, but the war in Ukraine isn't over, so that impact on wheat and vegetable oils is going to continue. You know, it's extremely dry in the U.S. Southwest, and oil prices are continuing to be high. So we've got issues with our winter produce. I think we've got a few more months of pain to come before we start getting some relief.
That was my next question. We have to wrap it up here. Is if you could look in your crystal ball, so you just said a couple of months. So realistically, by the beginning, the middle of next year, we should see prices back. Do you think what would be normal?
Well, I think if we get easing, we could start seeing prices be a little bit more comfortable by no earlier than the middle of next year. If many of these things continue, if the war continues, if other factors continue, it might take longer than that.
Okay.
And then just quickly, any products in particular that you're expecting things to be painful for? I'm thinking about the $10 cauliflower again.
Well, it looks like some proteins are going up right now in the short run, and we continue to see some significant price pressure on wheat-based products. So bread, baked goods, flour, vegetable oils, those are impacts of the war in Ukraine, and that looks like it's going to continue for a bit.
All right, Mr. Van Massa, I want to thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and sorry to be negative. No. Have a great day.
It's not your fault.
Not be negative.
You're a realist.
Got to be real, absolutely. So there you go. And to hear him just at the end say middle of next year, that's still
I ignored
6
that
months.
part.
That's still half a year away.
Nope.
That wraps up another edition of The Week That Was on the iHeartRadio Network. I'm Aaron Rand along with Natasha Hall, and we will see you next week.
Have a great week.
This has been the Montreal Now podcast with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6 on CJAD 800 or through the iHeartRadio app.